Senior State Representative.
So I want to say that the kinds of concerns that are raised by the neighbor, these are not the first time I've heard these concerns. Probably all of us have gotten thousands of emails from people around the city raising the same kind of concerns. I've had countless number of people come into my office to express these very same concerns. And I've also gone around the city, joined neighbors and walked through camps, walked through neighborhoods, spoken with folks that are experiencing homelessness, both with and without neighbors. The reports of bloody syringes and people exposing themselves to children, people sleeping or blocking streets. And it's not something which is just in this particular neighborhood, although under Pack Saddle at Ben White, it's a considerable problem. It's also not just under I-35 at Slaughter. It is also not just downtown. It is all over the city. And all over the city, people are coming in and saying the status quo, whatever it is that you're doing now, is not working. You have to do something else. Usually that's accompanied by saying, and stop studying this thing, and actually start doing something. We don't have to study it anymore because we've already studied this so many times. We know what the answers are. We know what the folks tell us, what the experts tell us to do. And the only question for us is whether or not we have the political will to put the resources against it and the political and community will to actually take the steps. I cannot participate any longer in not acting. I cannot participate any longer in not setting up the structure and the system to fundamentally do something to change the status quo in this city, because the status quo on this issue is killing us. I am proud to be part of a city council that has recognized this. We just went through a strategic planning process as a council in the city, and goodness knows there are lots of things that a lot of people want all over this city. We want more parks, we want better transportation, we want, the list goes on and on and on. But the number one thing this council set as the highest priority for us to deal with is the challenge we have with homelessness in our city. The number one priority. It's about time. And manager, thank you for coming on board and identifying this and saying we need one person in this city that wakes up every morning and goes to sleep every night, and this is the only thing that they think about. This is their job. Thank you for pulling back the process for selecting that person so as to elevate it, make it an executive level position and paying more money for that. And now that the application period is over, I hope you fill that position post-haste. And I'm encouraged with the indications that we have real good applicants for that position. I'm proud to be part of a council and a community that passed the largest housing bond in the history of the city at $250 million, part of which is to actually fund doing stuff that is real in this city. Putting with that the $30 million we're going to be able to harvest from the Waller Creek TIF, as we kept room in the park funding so that we could actually earmark money to be spent on homelessness. I'm happy to be part of a city that put $8.5 million in the last budget toward homelessness priorities, moving it from other priorities in the city to this area. I'm proud to be part of a city that has begun to actually take steps. Now, what we're told from the experts is, unfortunately, there's not one step we can do that makes this work, that it's a continuum. There's a series of things that have to happen for this to be able to work. What we have to do is we have to be able to find people that are homeless and move them into a shelter that acts as a triage center so that they can be assessed to determine what it is that they need. Do they need mental health support? Do they need a job? What kind of doctor do they need? What kind of employment do they need? What do they need? They need, and they need a home. So how do we get them in a home? How does a city do that like ours? What we know is that if we don't do these things, if we don't build out the continuum, if we are willing to accept the status quo, that is the recipe for us ending up like Los Angeles and Seattle and Portland and Oregon. And I refuse to sit by and maintain the status quo and not act and leave us on that path where we end up like those other cities. I want to also compliment Councilmember Kitchen, because it is a brave thing to do, to stand up and say, we're going to take a piece of that continuum, we're going to put some of the hardest pieces, the shelter, we're going to put that somewhere in your district, which also happens to be in my district too. And we look at each other on the dais, I think we have to make the commitment that every one of us is going to step up and act in the example of Councilmember Kitchen, because we're going to locate this kind of thing all over the city, because we have to locate it all over the city, because we can't let any one of these places get too big, because the experts tell us that if we do that, it's not going to work. So every one of us up here is going to have their day like this on the dais in order for us to be able to get done what has to get done in this city. But by God, we have to do it. We have to actually show the resolve to get this done. And when they're in the shelter, we have to provide the resources necessary to provide the home exit strategy so that when somebody goes in that shelter, they get the assessment and that they get the wraparound services that they need and they get moved into permanent supportive housing. You know, we were successful when we focused on the veterans population. We did this as a small, almost pilot program. And we got to the place in this community focusing with veterans, homeless veterans on the street, by putting in places for them along that continuum so that they could get into homes. And many of those veterans are now back out in our community, participating in the community outside of this system, but they are only doing that because we provided the opportunity and the pathway for them to be able to get out of the situation that they were in. We have to put the money and the resources and the political commitment where our words are and get that done, because we know from experience in this city, if we focus on a problem, we can in fact deal with it. This is a city that last year got half of the children in our city that were on our streets off the streets in a pilot program that we now need to expand. Now, this is going to be hard for us to do because the legislature just capped our revenue. And they capped our revenue, and if we keep our existing budget, we're $58 million upside down in 3 years. And in the face of that budget, which says we're going to have to cut existing programs and things that were existing in that budget, we're going to have to rally above that and say, not only are we going to do that, but we're also going to make room to deal with this, our number one priority. But we have set this as our number one priority. There are other things that we're going to be considering the rest of this evening on this issue. They all go together. We have ordinances out on our street that we know are not working. We have ordinances on the street that issued 18,000 tickets between 2014 and 2016, and clearly it did nothing to effectively manage this problem. Our law enforcement people interpreted it differently, brought the number of tickets down between 2016 and 2018, and still it's not the answer. That's not the answer. The other resolution we have tonight is asking the manager to come back here quick in August with telling us, okay, if we're going to tell people you can't camp there, where can they camp? And how do we do that in a way that protects the rest of our city? I look forward to us being able to consider those other resolutions, but even those resolutions are not enough. We hear the Councilmember Tovos bringing another set of resolution to us in August when we come back. This has to be our focus. This has to be the ball we don't take our eyes off of. This is the moment and the time to do that. We have a gift in this city right now. And the gift that we have in this city is that we have a community that is generally united in wanting to deal with this problem. We have not gotten to the place in this community where we demonize the people that are homeless, because as soon as we treat this like another political battle where we each choose sides on this issue and demonize the people on the other side of the issue and demonize the people who are homeless, we know again what that gets us. Because all you have to do again is look at Los Angeles and San Francisco and Seattle and Portland today, and that's what you see. We are not there yet. We can't let that worm turn. But I will tell you, if we just maintain the status quo and try to get by on what we're doing now, that will be the very next thing that happens in our community. We have to act. I understand the fears. I hear the fears. And manager, I will say to you that if we have any hope of being able to develop in this city the resources we need, then people need to look back at this location and say, okay, it did not develop the way we feared it might. Because if it develops that way, there won't be another one. And this one will get shut down. And we have to do better than that, which means the entire city's eyes are on this project, on this location, on what we're doing to help with the shelter at the Salvation Army. The entire eyes are on what we're doing here, and we have to make it work if we're going to expect to fill out the continuum that we need. I hear the neighborhood. I hear the fears. I know them. I have walked that area on Pack Saddle and Ben White with people in the neighborhood. We have to do the job. We have to treat it as the priority. We are all in this together. It's going to touch all of us. I appreciate this resolution. I'm going to vote for it. Further discussion on the dais.